Good morning. My name is Jassi. I'm the programming manager here for the Sonoma International Film Festival. Thank you for bearing with our delay. It's entirely my fault and confusion. I want to thank first our presenting sponsors, the KHR McNeely Family Fund and Delta Airlines. Without their support, this wouldn't be possible. We'd just be sitting in an empty hall here. I also want to thank the volunteers for all their hard work. We're here to watch Dear Jassi, which is a heartbreaking but also heartbreakingly beautiful film. It's a love story set between Canada and the northern Indian state of Punjab that won the Platform Prize at this year's Toronto International Film Festival. Its director, master filmmaker, Tarsem Singh Dhandwar, has spent his career in Hollywood with films like The Cell, The Fall, and Mirror Mirror, as well as myriad ads, including some you've surely seen, including a Super Bowl ad and iconic music videos with the likes of R.E.M., Lou Reed, and Lady Gaga. We're super honored that he's joining us here this morning. So please welcome Director Tarsem Singh Dhandwar.
Sorry about that. We were waiting in a different cinema, apparently. And then suddenly they told us, get in a car and come over here. I felt like I was in India. Just a completely different place. But all got organized. Thanks for everybody for coming. Just a couple of heads-up things. This film is a lot harsher than advertised. It is a true Romeo and Juliet story, as true as you can tell, so I couldn't really change the ending to be what it is. Just a heads up. Hopefully you fall in love with the characters. You find it funny, you find it charming, and if you do, you're in for a bigger heartbreak. But that's the play of it. And in the end, when the titles come up, you'll be probably a little shell-shocked. Let it play. You don't have to clap because the director's here. Just let the titles go. In the end, we're here for as long a Q&A as you want. And funny enough, we didn't know this was it, but our actress was in LA, and she's driven up also. So if you have any questions in the end, you're welcome to stay in the end to have a question there. Yes. It is a bit harsh in the end, so please do enjoy it. And it's in Punjabi, hopefully subtitles. And also, please turn your phones off and not on silent, because if the light comes on, I'll see it from the back and I'll come and point at you. Okay. Thank you.
I wanted to start out with asking you, you've been in Hollywood since university, but this is the first time that you've made a film that was set in India. And what was it about this project that you wanted to make as the first one?
Well, this one was just, I think, from India when they'd asked me if I... Oh, sorry. I think you can hear me now? No? Okay. All right. I thought I was shouting. What was it? It was just a subject matter that I'd heard about 23 years ago when the event happened. And recently, after working in LA, I was thinking I wanted to go to India to do some films, and people asked me what it would take for me to come there, and I just thought, probably I'll get a no in 2 seconds, because this was an idea that I'd kind of heard about the telephone conversation, which is what I was obsessed with, that a mother said XYZ to the guys. And I had reverse engineered the whole idea on what kind of world would it be where something like this was believable, never justifiable, that when a mom could say a line like that. So I waited, and then I told my brother, we either make the movie right now or we wait for 20 years when it becomes a bit retro or whatever. And then about 3 years ago, the people in India asked me if I wanted to come over and make a movie in Bollywood. And I said I'd like to, and probably make a lot of commercial films, but there's this little devil I have on my back I want to get off. And they said, whatever it'll take to be in business with you. And I told them the story, not expecting to hear back, and they just said, whatever it'll take. So I pitched it to one writer, and literally he got, as he called it, possessed, went into a hotel room, came back and said, this is the script. It was much, much longer. So it was all about their childhood, because their story went a lot darker after this when you'll Google it. It was the guy, yeah, believe it or not, it got much darker. He spent 5 years in prison because somebody accused him of rape, and then afterwards the girl took it back saying that actually somebody in Canada had paid her family for immigration rights, and then she took it back. So he came out, complete drinking problems and everything, and it took 22 years before Canada, finally, when we were shooting the film, Canada deported the parents, or her mother and that person, because they had been living in Canada all the time. So I didn't, and the story from then just moved on, and I just thought, I wanted to end it right there. where it was. And then I saw this mystic about 7 years ago, and he was my perfect kind of Shakespearean guy who would have an intro and an outro. So I gave him to give me the summary up front and finish it in the end. So I used those bookends to close it. So it was just a project that happened all thinking about it for 23 years, and it happened immediately.
So when you met the Mystic 7 years ago, did you already have the idea in your head?
I did not meet him. I saw him on YouTube. I just saw this guy singing, and he lost the plot. And he just put this thing on his head and just kind of zoned out.
Did you know right then and there,
No.
if you made this movie, you wanted him
No,
to be?
I knew that I wanted to work with him. I just saw that. So when the guy sent me the script, I just thought we need to lose about, like 30 minutes of the script. And he just said, but how will you, and I didn't want it to, as I said, have an ending where suddenly you show photographs, one of those, I was saying yesterday, the 80s Harvey Weinstein films where you just show in the end what the conclusion was by showing photographs. I didn't want to go there, and I didn't want to write just things. So then when I thought of him, I knew that was the purpose. So I called the writer, and I just said, don't worry, I know how to do it. But it had to have a very particular bookend because he had a very graphic take on the rape and the earlier, and I didn't want to go there. I just wanted to sit outside the room, which I thought was 20 times more disturbing, to imagine your worst nightmare and not being able to deal with it. So I didn't know that I was going to use him. Then I got in touch with his brother and then him, and I just said, like, if you can do this, it would be great.
Now I want to know, Pavya, so you were in UCLA Law, right, when you accepted this part. Can you tell me how you found Tarsem in the project and what that experience was like getting on board?
Yes, I didn't find him. He found me, thankfully. I would have chased around if I could, but no, that wasn't the way. Yes, I was a student. I had done acting before, but it was something that I wasn't thinking anything about at that time. Mainly because I was like, what are the odds, kind of thing. And I did apply for the job. I think I didn't audition. I spoke about myself, I think.
It was a bit of it was a slight mistake when they sent it to me. Basically, I knew that the parts couldn't be acted. They had to the people who were from the right places because it's a very particular accent that they have, very local, and I had to go with that. So the guy was the most difficult one for me first. I thought that would be difficult, and then I couldn't even find a girl. And then after all the actors were turning down, it was a sportsman. The guy actually never acted before. He was playing the kabaddi game, and I just said, I'll go with him. So when I got him, I just realized, I just said, because anytime they would make anybody act, it just looked horrible. So when they got this guy, I said, just isolate him, keep him away from actors, and just keep him away, and I'll figure that out. And then I had 48 hours before the movie would fall apart, and to say that how I found out was because I was calling Canada to my cousins and just saying, do you know anybody who's lived in Canada, maybe North America also, I was okay. But has a grandmother or somebody that speaks Punjabi at home, so that there would be a language barrier, but she would be broken up talking to him. So that was the call that I made. And everybody was like, oh yeah, I'll get back to you. I said, I have 48 hours. Who do you know? And no, we don't know anybody. We don't know anybody. And somebody said, we knew a band group. And then that band group said, we knew a girl who one down came here, but we think she moved away. And I just said, please send me her info. When she sent it to me, and then I was literally cycling to my son, talked to her in 2 minutes, and I just said, you're it. I will move heaven and earth. Just whatever it can be. And I just seen one photograph of hers, and I just said, please, I'll make everything work for you. And then later on, I found out that she had actually talked about the part to somebody, and typically Indian casting system, I had told them the girl had to be between, let's say 18 and 21 or 22. And they showed me everybody whenever I meet anybody, I'd say, so how old are you? And it's politically quite an incorrect question apparently to ask. And I would just say, how old are you? They said, I can play. I said, no, what does your passport say? And they would say 30. And I just said, okay. But I'm asking for this particular age group, for this particular language. Couldn't find anybody. There was literally 2 15-year-olds which there was a big problem with, and I didn't know what to do. And the one person who was the right age, she had applied. And whoever decision was, it just got lost in the ether. So when she told me, I applied for this, and I went like, oh, I don't even. Then I looked at it and I just said, just ignore the guys who are looking for her. I'll just do it myself. So she came over and just changed everything.
I don't know what I said in that call. That was better than my audition. But I like to redo it all the time.
You did nothing. It just told you, where did you grow up? What did you do? And you were just so charming. And I had one photo I'd seen. And I thought she just, because they told me she had done something, and it was one music video where I've Googled it and she's running in the background. And I just said, that's okay. Then later on, I found out apparently she had done a little bit of acting. And I just said, oh, I thought she had never done anything. But that was okay with me. I wasn't going to rule by that. She was the only person that came even close to the character.
Well, you got very lucky.
I would agree.
Are both the people portrayed still alive?
She's dead.
She was killed.
Yes, she was killed. And he's alive. He's in and out of prison all the time. And like first 5 years, the girl took it back, but then he's had solid drinking problems and a whole bunch of things, and I don't think anybody can blame him. So he is alive, and I intend to show him the film when I go to India.
Your film is fabulous.
So
Yeah, such a notorious story. How is the film received in Punjab?
it hasn't been. I'm going to go now because I'm hoping we kind of took it out of time a little bit. We came out, and so now we're just trying to find some eyeballs on it. And if you do like it, please write something nice on IMDb. If you don't, please don't write anything. And I'm trying to do that, get it together, and go back to India in about 2 weeks. I think we're in Turkey and Miami and all these festivals. Then I'm going to India, and then I will try to make it India's edition next year into the Oscars. So if all plays out, but they have not seen it. So, and they usually like things that portray India in a good way, and I'm not sure this will qualify, but we will try. So,
I'm curious if you can help me understand the thinking from families that if they believe the daughter's created shame for them in the family, by killing her, is the thought in the families that shame goes away?
a great question. I just think one thing that I've been addressing everywhere when I go is the word that the West uses for this phenomena is horrible. And the West is kind of, like the best at nomenclature in justifying horrible things by, a bomb that drops near school, you call it collateral damage just to not feel that and anything. And here they've used a word for something that in the East, when you say honor killing, there is nothing honorable about killing your kid or your sister or whatever. And yet somehow the people in the East have grabbed that word and they love it because they think it justifies something, and honor killing. In their language, it doesn't exist, that word. Somehow in the West, it has become honor killing, and now the Indians use it all the time. So to answer your question, it's better to bury one daughter as opposed to 8 not get married. That is the tragedy kind of a communal living, which is a joint family. You have 9 daughters. If one of them does something like this, the other 8 will either get married below the stature or never get married because the family accepts. So you have to kind of decide, where do you cut your losses? You have 9 children. They might not all be yours because I think the way they lived, there was a family of 29 that lived all together, and you have that many daughters. So if one, you just say, okay, we accept her, the others go never getting married, maybe. And if it becomes, if you kill her, then you can just claim it as a tragedy. And the truth is that you would have never found out about this. This was a very incidental way that one, the girl was from Canada. And second, which the journalist only told me much later, which is not in that much of the press, is that the cop that they had paid, when they threw the body, it was supposed to go on a little water part on this side, and the body landed on the other side. So the cop who was corrupted, who had paid, was ready for a call. And they would have just come and taken the body and said, oh, she's actually, they would have burnt her and it would have been gone in 2 seconds in a cremation and done. But the body, when they dumped her out of the car, fell over the ditch a little bit on another cop's this thing. So they called that precedent. And that cop came and said, what's going on? And then this cop landed up and tried to drag the body back. And they went like, no, it's in my regime. And that guy took it out in the press. Otherwise, you would have never even heard of it. It's a phenomenon that's, I wouldn't say very common, but it's not unheard of. And it happens more common than it should. So to answer your question, is it better this and that? I think it's like right now, the trans issue that I find very complicated. When people say, like, would you rather have, if you have a son and he wants to be a girl, would you rather have a daughter than a dead son? Well, it's much more complicated than that. And so same thing out here, that if you take one person away, are those 9 really, like going to get married, and you just cut your losses? And that was the mom's take on it, which is, I have many other daughters and they are going to get married, and that's what they would do with it. Shoot.
So then you're saying that this could happen again today?
It happens all the time. I don't know what you mean by today, but it happens all the time. It unfortunately happens a lot more in the rural, illiterate areas, which are not accounted for. and happens much more often. And it isn't particularly a religious issue, it's a cultural issue. It happens among the Muslims, it happens among the Hindus, it happens among all this stuff, and it's usually a caste system issue, somebody who marries below this. This one was not. This one was actually economic. The guy was from a poorer family, but they were actually equal caste. And still the result is, turned out so you can make that. But usually it's the other way around. If you marry into religion or you marry below your caste standard, and then the family just decides where do we cut our losses. Shoot.
And your background, is her background? Tell me a little bit about that. Is she from Canada?
I was born in India. I moved to Canada. I actually grew up quite basically where Jassi grew up, so I know, well, years later, but I grew up where she did. So I know the environment, and I knew some of the influences. I moved out, but I remember growing up there at a young age. And then I moved for school and for other reasons. But yeah, I mean, everywhere you go, the Punjabi diaspora, especially here, is kind of similar in a way. And I think you've mentioned this.
Yuba City.
Yeah, Yuba City, and you mentioned that people that immigrate, they come here, but they're still attached to the culture home. And I remember living like that in Canada as well.
Okay.
Are you married, and if not, is your family arranging for
I am not married. No, I'm quite young. I'm not. No, I'm 23. I don't think I'm. Now you're making me think about it. That was. Now I'm like concerned.
will your family
Yeah. Honestly. I mean, like, there's still people that do that in our culture, and I think it's not arranged marriage particularly that's an evil. I think it's a cultural thing, and I don't think there's anything inherently bad about it. It's all dependent on what every human wants. I wouldn't, like, I've been okay with it, and so it all depends, but again, it's also times are changing, and I know a lot of, in my current family that I know, there are people that are doing love marriages and arranged marriages. It's definitely changing
It's
as
about
time goes on.
85% of the time that is what happens. But yeah, it's quite a big percentage. And you can be educated and do it, and you can be not. In my family, I'm the only one that didn't do it. My brother who just showed up, he's sitting back there. He, of course, and it's a typical Indian thing. You take out an ad, put your hand up. It's the only brown guy in here. He's one of the
You
producers.
are one.
Oh, I'm brown one too. So I remember he took out an ad, and you go, and then you just say like, it's very specific, like a single white female, what you write, and this particular one is this virgin, educated, this one looking for something like this, and literally he went to see her, and he was supposed to see 5 girls. He saw the second girl, and he said, "That's my wife." And just never looked back, and they've been together ever since. But it works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. I'm not for it. I used to always say I'd rather get it wrong 10 times my way than get it right once my parents' way.
Well, I already whispered this to you, but you were the best part of the film. I could just.
Thank you. It was amazing.
Being local, did you know about Jassi's story before?
No, I did not, which is unfortunate that I didn't know. It wasn't just me that didn't know. A lot of Punjabi people do not know about it, and that's saddening to think. I had to research, and that's what I would urge everyone to do, to research it, for her to be remembered, and that is what I would want out of this, if there is anything, to have Jassi be remembered and having her soul rest in peace. So that's important, but it's not something as much talked about, at least from my perspective, in our culture. But hopefully, as people keep looking into it and looking into other stories, then
There's a very big shame factor attached to it. So.
How did it feel acting in that role and just going through the arc of the story?
well, this is my first real acting in general, so more than just the character, I just went with it, really. I mean, I truly thought if I was so bad, they would send me back. So I came in just like, ready to go and just put my, work into it. And also just there are many experiences that you get to relate to and you get to see with the character. And I really I enjoyed being able to portray her, and was very sad with what happened, because from what I've read about her, she was a great human being. And it's sad to see that go away from this planet. She would still be alive today. So that broke my heart, but it was
great also learning about her.
Quite small. I think when I finished shooting it, I was editing it every night. And 48 hours after shooting it, the film was finished. I came down to LA and it's right now changed because and there's very little coverage in that film. The style that I chose was very minimal. I didn't want any music. So I think it was, I don't know, what, do you know, do you think 30 something days? Very little. It was just some rehearsals. Literally, there were sometimes usually an average of 3 takes. And I just picked one of them and did it. We never overshot anything. It was just very little coverage, and it just went with the flow of it.
I love the feeling of being in India. Did you have trouble filming it in India? And where was it filmed in Canada?
In Canada, exactly in the place where she worked. So actually, the house was a different one. We could have gone to the house, but there was some complications, so I backed out from that particular one. But in India, it was very much close to where I was born, but the architecture has built up a lot since that particular time. Since it was a period piece, I didn't want to spend any money on art direction. So I went much closer to the Pakistani border, where there's not much construction allowed, and we had complete control of a little village. So we literally went there. So about 150 kilometers away from the original place. So, but the original place we could have also shot in. It just felt a bit sacrilegious and it felt a little bit off, and the amount of changes I would have had to do was going to become problematic. So we just moved close to the Pakistani border and did it.
What town in Canada was it?
Vancouver. Oh, sorry. You know that one, what is it called?
Surrey?
No, in Surrey, but what's it?
Abbotsford?
Abbotsford. No, it's near Abbotsford. It's where Jassi's, the exact place, where she worked in the hair salon.
Maple Ridge.
Huh?
Maple Ridge.
Maple Ridge. That's right. So Maple Ridge is where she worked in the hair salon, but that particular square had some architectural problems they've done a lot of building. So I literally shot around the corner from it. So it was Maple Ridge. So everybody's very familiar with the story, but it's kind of something that they've heard of before, and now it's kind of below the radar, and I just thought it'd be nice to shake it up.
I just graduated.
Hey, I didn't know that. Well
I know,
done.
we did it.
Yeah, beautiful images, beautiful
Thank you.
work, the DP, the light. Was it your team from India, or did you have 2 teams, and did you keep that DP for?
Yeah. It's a cameraman that I worked with all the time. He's the only white guy that I took to India with me. All the people that we did out there, I work with the locals. And this is the cameraman I've worked with in India for the last 30 years everywhere. And it was about 2 days away from me shooting it myself. I'd done all the research, but then Brendan became available. And I took him. He shot in both the places. And he's fantastic. So because it was one of the simplest shoots, because about 20 years ago, it would be really, really difficult shooting in India. Because when you'd go there, especially being brown, they never understood the hierarchy. I'd have a white crew. And they would just turn around and ask me, where should I park the trucks? And I said, go ask that guy. I'm the director. And they go like, but he's white. And I go, so now everybody's understood the hierarchy. I never had any problems. Everything was handled. And it was a very, very, very smooth a shoot. And the food was incredible. Yeah. No. Anybody else?
Of all the stories that you can tell from, of all the stories that you could have told, why this one?
It was from that telephone call. And I usually, if you know my work, if anybody does, unfortunately, I'm going to Miami next and they're screening it with The Cell, which is a kind of like, I do gothic horror and I do very fantastical stuff. And this is as far removed as that. So I'm ready for a lot of people who like that work to tell me how shit this is, or these people to say like how shit that is. So it's going to be quite polarizing. So for me, this story was just because I just thought if I'm going to India, just like before I did Hollywood, I wanted to do a personal film called The Fall. And it took a long time to get that going. And this particular one, I said, before I do the big ones in Bollywood, I know you'll never go backwards. I won't go and do this. So I said, I'll call this one. And somehow it fell together within months. And then we just made it immediately. So a lot of times, so I wouldn't say that I've been preparing it for 23 years. You just have it at the back of your head. And then suddenly something comes together and happens. And otherwise they don't.
Was it just Indian funding? That's it?
Yes. So what we are hoping right now that we find an international leg with it. And if we get the Indian nomination, and if we find some, like American Bridal, I would like to screen it everywhere. So we're taking it around and doing a song and dance through the next 4 or 5 months. We'll know if it ever gets in cinemas anywhere or not. But I think it's a thing. It's to bear witness. You need people to put their eyeballs on it. So just taking it everywhere and seeing if somebody takes it. It's not particularly a commercial film, but I think it needs to be seen. Thank you.